Did you see the interview that, excuse me, Al Franken gave to, oh man, what's that guy's name? He had the joke about Ted Cruz.
I don't know.
Oh God, what's his name? He's.
Either way, it sounds like I didn't see it.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like you didn't see it. He told a story about when he was in the Senate. He helped Amy, like Amy Klobuchar had a joke about Ted Cruz and how like the Carnival Cruise story was a thing, and Ted Cruz was just very. Honestly, just very Ted Cruz, like just really being a prick. I know that there's a saying in comedy about like punching up. And Carlin even talked about it in that famous clip with Larry King. Do you find it to be rather easy to make fun of someone like a Ted Cruz or a Matt Gaetz because they are millionaires sitting in Congress as policymakers, or because they are just deeply unlikable for the most part?
Yeah, I mean, I find it easy to make fun of Matt Gaetz because he's a pedophile. But I do think that, punching up is important. The victim in life should never be the victim in your joke. The one thing that annoys me is, like I posted a joke about Matt Gaetz the other day, and someone commented and they're like, "Oh, the jokes write themselves," and I was like, "No, they don't. The premises might,
right?
But like we're still working here, like this is still, if they write themselves, why didn't you come up with that?" I do think they make it easier for someone who's in tune with it and someone who writes for a living. But you still have to, in order for a joke to be good, you have to say something other people aren't saying. One of the reasons, to go back to it, one of the reasons the Tony Hinchcliffe MSG performance was so appalling is because, I mean, those were schoolyard jokes. Like, that wasn't a clever way to say any of the things that he was saying. It was just mean.
Right.
It was, there's a, I'm so annoyed that I do not remember who said this because I quote it all the time. I think it was Ryan Niemiller said that a joke has to be more than 50% funny. So if a joke about race is 70% funny and 30% about race, it's a funny joke. If a joke about race is 30% funny and 70% about race, it's just a racist observation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I think a lot of the humor that's out there is generic, and that's okay because I can't fix my car. My mechanic can.
Right.
Professionals can do things that non-professionals can't. And that's fine. But I do think that they're such cartoonish supervillains that they do provide a lot of ammo.
Mm-hmm. I've seen, on the same plane, I've seen a performance from Hinchcliffe. I've seen a performance from Jim Brewer when he's going on those tours with like Michael Flynn. Just really, really odd. The Greg Gutfeld show is supposed to be a comedy show on Fox News. It's deeply unfunny and just mean. Can right-wing comedians be funny?
Yeah. Mark Klein is an example of one who, he is a conservative, but his material is not about being mean to people who are already marginalized. It goes back to kind of what I said before about, for the most part, conservative is a philosophy about governing and economics. It's not social at all. And it's turned into something more now, which is unfortunate. But in order to be funny, you need a deep understanding of the human condition. And in order to have a deep understanding of the human condition, you typically recognize who's marginalized and who's not. Now, you can have the skills to be funny and then also be a narcissist or a sociopath or, all these other terms that I'm not qualified to diagnose. And then you think you're the one who's been marginalized. You think you're the downtrodden, etc. I think stand-up should be compassionate. And one of the things I really liked about what Jeselnik said and just his views in general is that the playing field shifts the same way that, like, in 1980, you didn't have to know how to hit a 105-mile-an-hour fastball. Now you do.
Right.
If you were looking at today's game, today's game of baseball with the knowledge that people had in 1980 about weight training, about diet, about sabermetrics, about all this other stuff, you wouldn't be as good. And so when the world changes, when your sport changes, whatever that sport may be, you need to be able to adjust to the change. Mm-hmm. And an observation that was valid 20 years ago isn't typically going to be valid now. And so the idea of, like, oh, we can't say anything anymore. It's like, no, you can say lots of stuff. You just can't say something stupid and wrong.
Right. And that's how I feel about what, Hinchcliffe has kind of said afterwards in the aftermath of his performance at MSG. And then also, the obvious elephant in the room here in this context is Chappelle, because he went after a marginalized group. Is there a way to, because I know, watching Hassan Piker's streams and seeing the reaction that a lot of people have to Chappelle, because he has a lot of trans fans, is I can't watch his stuff anymore. Is there a way to, like...
Oh, sorry, my wife just got home.
It's okay. My wife just left, so I was figuring my dog was going to do that at some point and how I was going to play it. But yeah, is there a way to, like, still appreciate the comedy even though they have certain viewpoints that are, like, detrimental to an entire community?
Well, I've never been able to separate the art from the artist. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, but Roman Polanski made brilliant film. I don't care. He's a monster.
Mm-hmm. But have you heard the Ignition remix, Steve?
The people who, anyone still listening to R. Kelly's music, like, just, no, don't. Rough. But with comedy, it's even more difficult because so much of who a comedian is reflected on stage. And for instance, with Louis C.K., some of my favorite bits of his were his incredible observations about women. And, he has that great bit about how a woman's natural predator is a man. Mm-hmm. And it's such a wonderful observation. But then I go, oh, but it's dishonest. And it came from a place of dishonesty, which makes it difficult for me to appreciate, even though what he said was still valid. With Chappelle, I did a bit about that on my last special, about how when it started, like, about our culpability in losing Chappelle. Because when it started, he made a couple of really poor choices in some material. And instead of looking at his body of work and who he is as a person and going, he's one of the most important progressive voices of our time, the internet wanted to kill him. Mm-hmm. No one has ever changed their mind from 1 million people yelling at them, ever. In fact, there have been tons of psychological studies that they will dig their heels in. I understand. I don't think it's the responsibility of someone who's been told that their existence is invalid to then be kind to the person who said so. What is difficult is the people who that wasn't about, who got offended on behalf of other people in a way that they weren't offended as much as they were trying to make themselves feel good about who they were, and pushed him further and further to the right. And it's at this point now he's so far over on that we've lost him. I think we do need to take some responsibility in how we react to things. I can't stand that the left is a circular firing squad. But that said, it's very hard for me to listen to him anymore, because it's hard for me to go, oh, these wonderful views come from the same mind that has these horrible views. And so much of appreciating comedy is an involuntary, laughter is involuntary. And so when in your head you're going, I don't like this guy, nothing they say is going to make you laugh again.